Hey guys, what's up? Chris here for BeerGeekNation.com. I wanted to do a little bit of an editorial today, something I've kind of been percolating on for a while. West Coast versus East Coast IPAs. Is the West Coast IPA effectively dead in the water, so to speak? I know a lot of people, if you look at Beer Advocate, if you look at Rate Beer, if you look at other beer rating sites, Untapped and all those, Northeast IPAs, the Northeast style IPA has just, the New England style IPA, whatever you want to call it, has just taken over the scene as far as being, in the top 10, top 25, IPAs of currently, I guess if you want to say of all time, that's a little bit presumptuous, I suppose, but just in the top most popular beers are the Northeast style IPAs, just big, juicy hop bombs, little carbonation, murky as hell, just super sweet, not cloying, but just super sweet and tropical and just hop juice. Whereas a couple years ago, everything was West Coast IPAs, where they're just clean, refreshing, crisp, more citrus fruit than kind of tropical juice. It's just, and everyone was brewing them. Everyone was brewing a West Coast IPA. If you were a brewery, no matter where you were in the world, more or less, you had to have a West Coast IPA. It was just the style at the time. Now we're starting to see that with the New England IPAs, the Northeast IPAs, where even places in San Diego are starting to brew these now. Middle of the country is starting to brew these styles of beer. They're getting them. They're not quite as intense as some of the Northeast, as your Trillium, your Heady Toppers, or your Alchemists, your Hill's Farmstead. And those guys, the Tree Houses, those guys have nailed the style. The problem is people trying to brew that style are still on kind of learning on that learning curve of, all right, how are they exactly doing that? So we're starting to get some kind of mediocre New England style IPAs, which you have them and you're like, well, this is kind of like a hybrid between the West Coast and New England, and you could see what they were going for, but they didn't quite hit it. And it's kind of a weird style. Technically, it's a very expensive style to brew. It's well, not as far as the grain bill, but they use English yeast typically, which is unheard of in the West Coast IPA scene. It's all hop bursting, so they're basically using a ton of hops right at the end of the boil. Some bittering, probably in the 60-minute or whatever they're boiling it for. But then they just hop slam the hell out of it. But turn off the heat, just put hops in at different temperatures, do it that way, and then they dry hop the hell out of it. So a lot of time goes into these. Not a lot of time actually. They're meant to be turned around pretty quickly. You can tell by how they look. They don't filter them, obviously, but a lot of dry hopping, a lot of hops go into each one, whether it be a double IPA or a single IPA, and it's just, they don't last real long. Their shelf life is not as long as, say, a West Coast IPA, but it's what people want right now. It's what people want. So have they killed the West Coast IPA? Absolutely not. Look, between you, me, and the wall, the West Coast IPA is the IPA that started me on my IPA craze, on my IPA fascination, and it will always be there. I go to a bar or a restaurant or whatever, and I see, I know it's a fresh West Coast style IPA. I'm going to get it. It's a classic. What's going on right now is kind of like a new girl came to school. Everyone wants to take this new girl to a dance, right? So the West Coast style IPA is like the girl who you've been in school with for 5 or 6 years. You're not quite as interested in her anymore as you are in this new girl that came, i.e. the New England style IPA. So that's kind of what's going on. It'll level out here in a couple years once everybody has a New England style IPA. And that's actually where it'll get interesting, to see kind of the balance that is stricken between the two. Or is there going to be an interloper, a third party in this system? Although if you're in the US, obviously third parties don't work out too well for a lot of people, but that's a whole nother conversation now, isn't it? So yeah, the West Coast style IPA is not dead. The reason we have New England style IPAs is because of the West Coast style IPA. I mean, you look at Pliny, it's still one of the best beers in the world. Stone's still brewing some great West Coast IPAs. So many breweries in San Diego brewing fantastic West Coast style IPAs. It's not a style that's going anywhere anytime soon. No, it's just not. I think just people they're everywhere. They were everywhere for a long time. So they didn't get sick of them, but they got comfortable with them. They knew they were going to be able to get one somewhere and it was going to be solid. And that they got comfortable with it. And just like anything else, you get comfortable with it, you want to try something new. Enter Heady Topper, which is really what started the fad, arguably Hill Farmstead, but more so I think Heady Topper. And it just took off from there. And it'll be interesting to see where it goes. So what do you guys think? in my final opinion, West Coast IPA, not dead. It's just kind of laying dormant for a little bit. It's still there. It's still there. It's still part of the lexicon, if you will. I still dig them. People still brew them. I'm happy to have them. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here in the next, I don't know, 5 or 6 years to see kind of, like I said, to strike the balance between Northeast, West Coast. If you're a brewery, do you have to have one of each? Is that what we're going to do? Are we going to start blending them and calling them something else? Who knows? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. Remember, folks, life's too short. Drink amazing beers. Cheers.